In Parshas Massei we learn about the city of refuge. The 6th city of refuge. That's where the unintentional killer runs to. Says the Torah, you should add another 42 cities. Says the Oyev Yisrael in Parshas Massei, we should know that the Torah is nitzchis. The Torah is eternal. So this mitzvah must apply today. How does it work? We don't have cities of refuge. Says the Oyev Yisrael, what happens to a person who kills himself? He has a soul, a pure soul, and he in essence kills himself anytime he does something wrong, whenever he sins. Whenever he does bitul zman, bitul Torah, it's as if you're killing yourself. What's the tikkun? How do you rectify that? You accept on yourself oil malchus shamayim ahava, with complete ahava, mesirus nefesh. How do you do that? You use the 6 words of the Shema. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. 6 words corresponding to the 6 cities of refuge. That's where we have to run to. We run to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to accept all Malchus Shamayim. That is our city of refuge. But there's other 42 cities. That's the first paragraph of the Shema. Ve'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha. B'chol levav v'chol nafshecha v'chol miyodecha. There are 42 words corresponding to the 42 cities of refuge. Says the Oyev Yisrael, that is Kabbalas Ahavaso Yisbor V'Toirosoi B'chol Lev V'Nefesh. That is how you accept the Kodesh Baruch Hu's love and His Torah with your entire heart and soul. And by the Mesirus Nefesh, Be'emes, your entire being, your essence, with all your heart, to accept on yourself all Malchus Shamayim, with that, everything will be atoned for him. That unintentionally, you hit your own soul. That is what the Oyev Yisrael says. So if we are obligated to receive Torah, to accept Torah, we should find out, how do we do it? B'chol lev v'nefesh, with all our heart. We learn about the 48 ways to acquire Torah. That is how we receive Torah, we accept Torah. So if there are 48 words in the Shema ve'ahavta, and they tell us about the obligation, the Kabbalah of Torah, we have to find where each one of the 48 kinyanei HaTorah is alluded to in the words of the Shema. So my dear friend, my chavrusa, Rabbi Avraham Louis Kohen Shlita, after hearing this concept, this idea, that this must be a remes, a hint to the 48 kinyanei HaTorah in the Shema, asked me to join forces together and try to find where each kinyan HaTorah is alluded to in the words of Shema. So b'siyata dishmaya, we were able to accomplish that mission, and we now are going to mention the 48 kinyanei HaTorah and try to find for each one the corresponding word in the Shema. The first kinyan, which is mentioned, is betalmud, and that corresponds to the word bam in the Shema. Because BAM is an acronym, Beis Mem. Beis is the first letter, and the first word of Torah shebichsav. Bereshis, and the Torah shebe'al peh, the old transmission, that starts with the word Massei, the first Mishnah, Maseches Brachos. Beis corresponds to Bereshis, Mem corresponds to Massei, and BAM alludes to Talmud. The second kinyan is Bishmiya Sa'ozen. You have to hear with your ear. That obviously corresponds to the word Shema. Be'arichas sfasayim, all has to do with your lips. That corresponds to v'dibarta. Dibarta, the dibu, talking, comes by moving your lips. In Eruvin Nun Daled Amud Aleph we learn about the importance of learning not with scanning with your eyes, but actually verbalizing your limud, saying the words. The third kinyan of Torah is bebinas halev, besichlus halev. The lev, our heart, should have kavana. Kavana, to acquire Torah. And that corresponds to the word bechol, when it says bechol levavcha, with all your heart. Kinyan hey is be'ema. Kinyan vav is be'yira. And those two correspond to Elokeinu and Elokecha. Those two words in the Shema that corresponds to Midas Hadin, because Elokim is Midas Hadin, strict judgment. Be'anova is the 7th kinyan, being humble. That corresponds to the word Me'odecha. Me'odecha monetary possessions, and it comes to us to remind us to concentrate on simple, humble things, not to collect as much money and assets as you can. The 8th kinyan of Torah is besimcha, and that corresponds to the word hayoim in the Shema. The true simcha a person has is learning Torah. How do we know this? Because in Tisha B'Av one is not allowed to learn Torah, as the Shulchan Aruch says in Siman Taf Kuf Nun Dalet, because Torah gladdens one's heart, as the pasuk in Tehillim says. B'kudei Hashem yesharim misamchei leiv. Simcha has a numerical value of 353, and that corresponds to the 353 days of the year. There's one day that we're missing, because that's Tisha B'Av. You can't learn Torah, and that is the true simcha. So the word simcha, that kinyan of Torah, corresponds to hayom, because every single day one has to be sameach. Sameach with what? Happy with learning Torah. The 9th acquisition of Torah is tahara, purity. Keneged levavecha, because the lev, the heart, is pure. As the pasuk in Tehillim says, lev tahor v'ali eloikim. Kadosh Baruch Hu created for us a pure heart. The 10th acquisition is beshimush chachamim. You have to be meshamish tamidei chachamim, and that is connected the word ukshartam. We have to tie ourselves to the tzaddikim, to the talmidei chachamim, and to learn from them. The 11th kinyan of Torah is digduk chaverim, and that comes corresponding to the word Yisrael, because Kol Yisrael chaverim, as the Yalkut Shimoni Medrash Tehillim Remez Taf Ayin Tes says, we are all connected, we are all one. Uvepilpul hatalmidim, that is the 12th acquisition, that is corresponding to the word Veshinantam. Veshinantam, that is the Talmidim. Talmidim are Habanim. Talmidim are considered our sons, as Chazal tells us in Sanhedrin Daf Yutes Amud Beis. Be'yishuv is the 13th acquisition. Be'yishuv corresponds to the word Beshivtecha. When you sit in your house, Misyashev Besalmudo, not when you're running and doing all kinds of other things while you're learning. You're sitting in the best of Medrash and learning. When you're sitting and learning, not when you're busy with a million other things. One shouldn't answer in halacha until he has Yishuv Hadas, until he looks into the matter. Beshivtecha. Don't do things rushed. Don't learn when you're so busy with a million other things. You can learn there. It's a great idea if you can, but that's not the optimal way of learning. Be'yishuv hadas. That is how you acquire Torah. The 14th acquisition is Be'mikra and Be'mishnah, and that is corresponding to the word ha'ele, these. 15th acquisition is Be'miut shena, minimizing the time you sleep. That obviously is corresponding to the word uvekumecha, when you rise. Get up at night to learn Torah, for the merit of learning Torah at night. What you learned won't be forgotten. The next acquisition is bemiut sicha, minimizing your words. That corresponds to the word nafshecha. You should only worry about speech which is required for your nefesh, which is a chelak eloika mimal, a spark from the heavenly throne, and not to talk things which are opposite to your true essence, things of matters of oilam hazeh. The 17th acquisition of Torah is b'miut tanug, minimizing pleasures, corresponding to the word hadvorim, these, and nothing else, nothing more. The 18th acquisition is b'miut schoira. That corresponds to the word beisecha. Should be happy with what you really have. Don't try and go and collect everything possible in the world. Gather it. What you really need for beisecha, for your house, for your household, for your household members. Don't need more than that. B'miut schok, the 19th acquisition, corresponding to the word al, that divrei Torah should be on your heart and not anything else. B'miut derech eretz, corresponding to the word bederech. Be'erech habayim. Erech habayim is one of the midos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that corresponds to the word Hashem, because Hashem is midas chesed, and just like He is erech habayim, we have to be the same. We have to do the same because we are commanded to walk in His ways. Belev toiv, that corresponds to the word levavecha, leiv keneged leiv. Be'emunas chachamim is the 23rd acquisition of Torah, And that corresponds to the word Es Hashem Elokecha, because in Psochim Daf Chav Beis, in Kiddushin Daf Nun Zayin, Babakama Mem Aleph, and Bechorus Daf Vav, we learned that the word Es comes to include Talmidei Chachamim. Es Hashem Elokecha comes to include the Talmidei Chachamim. We have to believe in the Talmidei Chachamim. The next acquisition of Torah is Bekabbalas HaYesurim, accepting Yesurim, afflictions, sufferings. That corresponds to the word Echad. Because strict judgment and mercy, Hadin and the Rachamim, came down together from Shamayim. They come from one source, and just like one accepts Chesed with love, he should accept Yesurim with love. Because everything is a Chesed of Hashem. As the pasuk in Mishlei says, Ki es Hashem, Ki es Asher Yohav Hashem Yochiach. The one whom HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves is the one he rebukes. And in Medrash Rabbah Bereishis Nun Aleph Gimel we learn, En davar ra yored milmala. There's nothing bad that comes from upstairs. It really is all good. The 25th acquisition of Torah is Hamakir es mekoimoy. Know your place. That is corresponding to the word Beveisecha, which is your place. Hasamech bechelko, the following acquisition, Keneged uvechol meodecha, be happy just with what you have. 27th, Ve'eino machzik toiva le'atzmoi. That corresponds to the word al, above. You shouldn't feel above others. The following acquisition, Ve'ois es yad ledvarav. That corresponds to the word le'ois. That he only says what you need to say, and he makes sure that when he says something, he doesn't make a mistake. He minimizes his words all the way down to letters, to an ois. That is why ois es yad ledvarav corresponds to the word le'ois. 29th, ahuv is loved. That corresponds to the word lebanecha. Just like you love your sons, you should make yourself loved by others. The 30th acquisition is oihev es hamakom. That corresponds to the word Hashem, because Hashem's name is the Makom. That's what the Medrash says in Bereishis Rabbah, Parasha Sameches Ostes. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called Mekoimo Shel Oilam, Ve'en Oilamoi Mekoimo, and that is why we call HaKadosh Baruch Hu the Makom. The 31st is Oihev es HaToichechos. Love the rebuke, corresponds to the word Ve'ahavta. 32nd is Oihev es HaMeisharim. That corresponds to the word Vehayu. Because in Brachos Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, again in Megillah Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis, we learned that the word Vehayu means Behavayasam, as is. Don't flatter anyone. Keep it straight, as is. Misrachek min hakavod is the following one. That corresponds to Velechtecha, that you should choose to walk away from kavod. That is as Chazal tell us in Medrash Tanchuma Vayikra, some in Siman Daled. Anyone who runs away from kavod, kavod will pursue him, and that is obviously a measure for measure. The following kinyan Torah is eino roidef achar hakavod. Don't pursue kavod. That corresponds to the word Hashem again. There's a few Hashems in Ve'avto and in Shema, because the true kavod only belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The 35th acquisition of Torah is velo megis libo betalmudoi. That is corresponding to the word v'shoch becha, that when you think about yourself as lying down, that is standing straight up, you will not be haughty. Ve'eino sameach behoira'o. Not happy with the fact that you merit a level of being able to instruct others what the halacha is. That corresponds to the word metzovecha. That is the lashon of tzivui, a commandment. V'yira, fearing. There's no hana there. Not happy that you achieved this level because one should fear. Maybe he is not worthy of it. It's so deep, halacha, that maybe one will stumble. The 37th acquisition is noise ba'olim chaveiro. Helping your friend corresponds to the word yadecha, that you extend your arm, your hand, to help him. The 38th, Machrioi lekaf zechus. Judge others favorably. That's connected the word bain. Bain and echa. Shouldn't judge just what according to what you see. Also, what's bain the eyes, what's between the eyes, what those things that are hidden from your eyes. The 39th acquisition of Torah is ma'amidoi al ha'emes. Corresponds to the word anoichi, because anoichi is Hashem, and Hashem is emes, and his choisam is emes, as we learn in Shabbos Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph. The Baruch Hu's stamp. His seal is emes. The 40th kinyan is ma'amido al hasholom. Shalom reminds us of mezuzos. Why is that? Because of the machlokes in halacha. How do you have to set the mezuzah in the house? Standing upright or lying down? So we do a compromise. And we tilt it. The mezuzahs tell us to compromise in order to achieve peace. 41st kinyan of Torah is misyashev liboy betalmudoi. That corresponds to the word uchsavta, because writing enables you to have more understanding and depth in your Talmud, in your limud. The Mekubalim write that writing, what you learn, equals 4 times chazara. The 42nd kinyan of Torah is shoel ka'inyan umeishiv ka'halacha. Know what to ask and know what to answer. That corresponds to the word al yadecha. Because writing questions, answering questions, causes an expansion and adding to Torah. And that is the word al, that you add, shema'ale, and you add to Torah. The 43rd principle, the 43rd kinyan acquisition of Torah is shomea u'moisif. You hear and you add. Corresponds to the word letoitafos, because in some heading daf daled amud beis we learn letoitafos is 4. The Gemara tells us that tat and pat, different words, different language, tells us it's a 4. So you see from one word, suddenly there is 4. That's just like shomea u'moisif. You hear and you add. The 44th kinyan of Torah is haloimed al menas lelamed, the one who learns in order to be able to teach. That corresponds to the word uvechol nafshecha. You learn in order to add, to teach others. Bechol has the numerical value of ben, 52. And the talmidim, the students, are called or counted as your sons. Uvechol, the vav is vav that comes to add. Uvechol, that you want to add it to your learning, to your own learning, and you want to teach others. The 45th kinyan is ve'aloimed al menat la'asos. You learn in order to do. That corresponds to the word b'sharecha, that even when you're outside the 4 walls of the Beis HaMedrash, you're found in the gates of the town, in the marketplace, oise, you do. In other words, you fulfill what you have learned. The 46th kinyan of Torah is amachkin esaboy, to make your Rebbe wiser, corresponding to the word einecha, because we know that the einei ha'eda are the chachamim, the eyes of the nation are the chachamim. Ve'amechaven ha'mevin es shmuasoi, one who understands the halacha that he just learned, the Torah that he just heard, corresponds to the word asher. Why? Because in Medrash Rabbah, in Shir Hashirim, Ba'al Shaches, Os Beis, we learn that asher comes from the language of ishur, confirmation. Mechaven es shmuaso means that he should know Ikal Kavanas Hashmua, the foundation, where it comes from. And the Shmua should be Aliba de Hilchasa, according to the Halacha. And that is the language of Ishu. You accept the Shmua only if it's confirmed, authorized. The 48th and last acquisition of Torah. Ha'oimer davar b'shem oimru. Say the Torah that you say, from whom you heard it from. Corresponding to the word Vehayu. Vehayu letoitafos. Vehayu, as we said before in Brachos Daf Yud Gimel Megillah Daf Yud Zayin, Vehayu behavayason, as is. You should hear it, and then you should say it as is, exactly the way you heard it, from whom you heard it. Yehi Ratzon, that indeed we should be able to run into the city of refuge, the 48 words of the Shema, accepting in ourselves all Malchus Shamayim be'ahava. We should be able to complete the 48 ways, acquisition of Torah, to be able to be koine Torah, be'ahava, b'chol lev v'nefesh.